Hello, please. Are we together, please? Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So I think maybe it is time for us, to start our class. So let me quickly share my screen so that we'll just kickstart, our class today. Hello, please. Can you confirm whether if you can see my screen, please?
Yes, sir. Can see your
Yes, sir.
screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's great. I think maybe let's just please, in case maybe if you notice maybe some people, are trying to join, please just draw my attention so that I will just quickly add them. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today is like we are meeting today for another. We are meeting today, for another taxation class. So of which today, by God's grace, we'll be looking at tax administration in Nigeria. And as if you could recall, in the last class, we were able to discuss on the introduction, of taxation, where we learned, about what taxation is all about, the tax, different type of tax, by method, even by structure. We have seen, the principles, of taxations, among others. So today, by God's grace, we'll be looking at tax administration in Nigeria. So you see, if you're talking about tax administration, it's like, before we start, discussing about this new topic of today, that is tax administration, you remember, according to Nigerian, or let's say as far as, Nigerian tax system, is concerned, we can even say that, we have a kind of tripartite. So of which, this tripartite, of the Nigerian tax system, it comprises, of tax policy, tax laws, and tax administration. So by God's grace, we'll be looking at tax administration in Nigeria. And for this tax administration, level of the government, is having taxes that is, they are expected, to collect. Like if you take, the federal government of Nigeria, according to, exclusive list, there are some taxes that are meant, for federal government of Nigeria. So we have, some taxes, and levies that are meant for state government. And then we have, some, levies, taxes and levies that are meant for local government. So we have, what we call a relevant tax authority. So of which, this relevant tax authority, we have it, at this at this different level of government. So we have it, at the federal level, we have it at the state level, and then we have it at the local government level. So that of the federal level, we call it Federal Revenue Service. So it is this Federal Revenue Service that is being saddled with such responsibility of, administering, collecting, assessing and enforcing, what tax laws. The tax laws, that relates to, federal government of Nigeria. So the same thing, at the state level, we have, the State Internal Revenue Service. So which, that State Internal Revenue Service, it is, the tax authority that is being saddled with the responsibility to administer, to collect and assess, taxes that are meant, for the state government. And then, at the local government level, like I said, we have local government revenue committee. So which, that local government revenue committee, it is being saddled with the responsibility of collecting, the levies that are collectible by the local government in Nigeria. So it's like more or less. Hello, sorry. I'm using my phone and it's like I'm just having an interruption, and sorry about that. The calls, are just coming into my phone. But please, can you hear me, please?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's like, today, like I said, we'll be discussing, on tax administration. And if you're talking about our introduction, tax administration, it refers to machinery and processes put in place by government to assess, collect, account, and enforce tax laws effectively. And in Nigeria, the system is guided by various tax legislation and coordinated by different tax authorities at the federal level, the state level, and the local government level. Like I said, at the federal level, we have the Federal Revenue Service, that is FRS. And then at the state government, at the state level, we have State Internal Revenue Service. And then at the local government level, we have Local Government Revenue Committee. So it's like these are the various, tax authorities, that we have. So of which, these relevant tax authorities, they've been saddled, with such responsibility of tax administration, of which, they've been empowered, by the law to assess, to collect, and account, and even impose tax laws, at their, jurisdiction. So now, let us, for these tax authorities are the, to ensure efficient tax administration. So an efficient tax administration, normally ensures compliance. That is, the compliance, of the tax laws, and it also reduces, evasion. So which, if you're talking about evasion, is like it is a deliberate, or let's say, it involves, falsification, of, records or document, just, for the taxpayer to avoid, paying tax, or to end up, paying nothing completely. So that is, evasion. So even though, evasion is illegal, because it's like, it has nothing to do with, taking advantage of the loopholes that exist, in our Nigerian, tax law. So it's like, it is a deliberate whereby, the taxpayer, just, decided, to tamper, with their record, so that, they will end up paying, or let's say maybe evading tax, completely. So that is tax evasion. And then we also have tax avoidance. So which, tax avoidance, that one is by legal means. Because, taxpayers, they look, for loopholes, in the tax laws. So maybe if there are some things, that is not being covered, by the tax law, so in that case, they can now take that advantage, so that, they will end up paying a lesser amount, as a tax. So it's like an efficient, tax administration ensures, or let's say it reduces, tax evasion, and it also enhances revenue generation for socio-economic development. So what are the objectives of tax administration in Nigeria? Number one is to ensure effective and efficient allocation of taxes, to ensure effective and efficient collection of taxes. So that's why, at this various level of the government, the federal government, state government, and local government, we have these relevant tax authorities. Like I said, at the federal level, we have the Federal Revenue Service, and then at the state, we have the state internal revenue service, and then at the local government, we have local government revenue committees. So it's like the essence of having these tax authorities that is being, saddled with this responsibility of administering, assessing, collecting, and enforcing taxes. It's just, to ensure efficient collection of taxes, at these various levels. And then another objective of this tax administration is to reduce tax evasion and avoidance. Like I told you, these are the two biggest, challenge, of tax administration in Nigeria. And that's, what they're just, trying to address this issue of tax evasion, especially, tax evasion. Like I told you, it is, illegal. So of which, the evaders, or let's say those taxpayers that normally, engages in this tax evasion. So it's like they are committing a criminal offense. So of which, that kind of offense, they commit, is what is a felony. So of which, it can lead them, to prison, you understand, or life imprisonment, in some cases. So another objective of this tax administration is to ensure equity, fairness, and transparency in taxation. So that's why, according to canons, of taxation that is being given by, Adam Smith, he made mention of equity as one of the principles or one of the canon, of taxation. So where he said, what the tax, it should be, it should be made, in such a way that the taxpayers or people, will be taxed based on their ability. So if it happens, Mr. A, can afford to pay 2,000 naira as a tax. So it's like, he'll be assessed based on that level of his, capability or ability or based on his earning. So if maybe, somebody that is earning, a lower income. So it's like it's expected, to what? To pay or to contribute, a lesser, amount, as a tax. So that is to ensure equity, fairness, and transparency in taxation. And then another objective is to, improve voluntary compliance among taxpayers. Another objective of this tax administration in Nigeria is to provide adequate revenue to government for developmental purposes. It's like basically there are two major reasons why, government, collect tax. So one of the reasons is just, for the government to generate revenue that, it will use, to what? To provide, these developmental, projects, like maybe road construction, schools, hospitals, and the rest. So mostly it's like government use taxpayers' money in funding those kind of developmental projects. And another reason is this tax can be seen as one of the, instruments that is, fiscal policy. So when, the economy, is being battled, with some issues or problems, so in that case, especially when, there is too much money in circulation, so government do increase, the tax so that, government can now withdraw money from the hand of the people, in an attempt to stabilize, the economy. And then another, sorry, it's like we have, so sorry, please. It's like I'm a bit, interrupted. Calls just came in, so that is what is distracting me. So please, so sorry about that. Apology. So please, it's like these are some of the objectives of this tax administration in Nigeria. And then we have the structure of tax administration in Nigeria. So like I said, this tax administration in Nigeria is structured across tiers of the government. That is 3 tiers of the government. So at the federal level, we have, at the federal level, it is being administered mainly by the Federal Revenue Service. So of which the taxes handled include the company income tax, the petroleum profit tax, value added tax, capital gain tax, stamp duties, education tax, national information technology and development levy. So all these are the taxes, that have been collectible by the federal government of Nigeria, and it is being, administered, assessed and collects through the Federal Revenue Service. So it's like if you take other relevant tax authorities like the states, Internal Revenue Service, they have no power to collect any of these, taxes, we've made mention of. Whether, or let's say, be it company income tax, petroleum profit tax, value added tax, capital gain tax, that is on companies, and then stamp duties too, on companies, because for this capital gain, and stamp duties, so if the transactions, is like it involves, this that is being managed by one person. So in that case, it's like they'll be subjected to tax under state internal revenue service. But if it is for corporate, so in that case, it's only the Federal Revenue Service that is having the power, or that is being empowered, by the law to administer, to collect and assess those taxes. And then we also have, at the state level, like I said, at the state level, we have the State Internal Revenue Service. So of which, each state, of the federation in Nigeria is like they have this State Internal Revenue Service. And what are the taxes, that they normally, administer? They include, what the personal income tax. So of which, mostly for this personal income tax, it is being, categorized into two. That is employment, from income, and then employment from business. That's, for individuals. So that is, personal income tax. Like, for the payees, let's say, for the staff or workers, they've been subjected to personal income tax through what we call payee. That is pay as you earn. That is, for the employees. And then we also have, with the personal income tax, like maybe the traders, and other businesses that is being managed by one person. So in that case, it's like they used to be subjected to tax under personal income tax. And then we have, business premises registration. So which, this business premises registration, even though some state, it is not, the Internal Revenue Service that normally administer it. But like, let me give an example of Kano State. Kano State, for this business premises, registration, it is being administered by Ministry of Trade and Investment. So they are the one, that used to normally raise demand notice requesting, the companies, that is the corporate entities and individual businesses, to pay, for this business premises. And how does this business premises is being administered? Like I said, it is being administered by, in Kano State, but I don't know for other states, is through Ministry of Trade and Investment. So which, they normally, that is, they categorize, the businesses. We have, some businesses that are, in the urban areas. We have, some businesses that are in the semi-urban areas. And then we have businesses, that are, located or situated, at the rural areas. So it's like the P, which is charged, for this business premises, it varies, based on the way, they classify it into urban, semi-urban, and, rural areas. So like generally, for the individual, for both individual businesses and, corporate entities, the first time registration is just 10,000 naira. While, for the subsequent renewal, that is annual, renewal, for this business premises, it's just, 5,000 naira. I will also have, a trading permit. So the companies, it's only, the companies that involve, foreign involvement, like maybe the companies, that is being set, by expatriate here in Nigeria. So it's like they do pay what we call a trading permit. And that trading permit, is just 10,000 naira. Sorry, it's just 200,000 naira. That is, for the corporate entities. While, other businesses, it's like they do pay 50,000 naira. So, and then we also have the local government revenue committee. So like I said, the taxes and the levies, collected, by this revenue at the taxes, and levies, collectible by this local government revenue committee comprises of the tenement rates, shop and kiosk rate, slaughter slab fees, market fees, motor park fees, merriment fees, bicycle, canoe fees, and other, levies like, operational fee, sanitation fee, signboard, and the rest. So all these are the levies that is being, collectible by local governments, revenue committee. And now let's take, these, relevant tax authorities and discuss and see, their functions. Like, let's start, with the Federal Inland Revenue Service. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, is the major federal tax authority established under FRS, Establishment Act 2007. So, of which, before, this Federal Inland Revenue Service it was not an autonomous, board. So before, they used to be answerable to Federal Ministry of Finance. So which even the chairman, of the service used to be answerable. He normally reports to Honorable Minister of Finance. So it was, after this Federal Revenue Service Establishment Act of 2007 was, enacted, it became a law. So that's when the Federal Revenue Service, it became, an autonomous body. It becomes, an autonomous body of Federal Ministry of Finance. So what are the core functions of this Federal Revenue Service? So one, they normally, administer, they assess, collect, and account for federal taxes. And what are the taxes, that they normally, administer? It comprises of, company income tax, value added tax, petroleum profit tax, capital gain tax, among other taxes. So and they normally administer tax laws. The tax laws, they normally administer comprises of CETA, that is Company Income Tax Act, Petroleum Profit Tax Act, Value Added Tax Act, Capital Gain Tax Act, and so on and so forth. So, and another function performed by this Federal Revenue Service, they normally issue guidelines, rulings, and information, circulars. So this is another, part of their circular, another part of their function, they normally perform. So of which, we are all much aware that, in Nigeria, we have Tax Reform Act, which was, enacted, by Mr. President just of recent. So of which, the proposed date of the implementation is 1st January 2026. So of which, prior to, that implementation date, the Federal Revenue Service, it has, as part of its responsibility to issue guidelines, on how these new tax laws should be complied, by the taxpayers, maybe through organizing seminars, just, trying to enlighten, the taxpayers, to know about these new laws, that came into being before, the implementation, of those new tax laws. So that one too, is part of the, function of Federal Revenue Service. And they also maintain taxpayers' record and database. That is through, taxpayers, capturing through, what they call, that is taxpayers identification number. And then they also impose penalties for tax default. So when, taxpayers, they default, they fail, not to, file their annual return as at when due. So in that case, it's like the Federal Revenue Service is being empowered through, the acts that establish, the service. They can now, impose penalties and even, interest. Hello, please. Are we together, please? It's like,
Yes,
I've been
sir.
disturbed. Paul, it's many calls, that is coming, into my phone. So it's like, I'm a bit, destabilized. But so sorry about that. But going forward, we'll try not to, connect, with my phone. I will just, try to be using, my, the other means. But so sorry, about that. So it's like, it is somebody, that is being calling. And I don't want to, disconnect and then, to attend to him. So sorry about that. But let's just manage it. But going forward, inshallah, we'll try to, avoid this kind of, interruption when, we are having the class. So just bear, with the class as it is today. So we are still, on the functions, of Federal Revenue Service. So like I said, it's half our whole part of its function is to impose penalties for tax default. So maybe after a taxpayer, is being, assessed and, that taxpayer, default. So for that default, it's like, it attracts, what penalty. in addition, to interest. So of which, the penalty mostly, is 10%. And then, the interest is at, the prevailing interest rate. So that's how, they normally impose this, penalty for tax default. And another function performed by this Federal Inland Revenue Service is advising government on tax policies and reform. Just like, what happened of recent. Like I told you, we have this, Nigerian Tax Reform Act that brought about, four different, acts, like tax administration, the Nigerian Revenue Service Act, you know, the Tax Ombudsman, Act, about four of them. So of which, like I said, the implementation or the proposed, implementation date is 1st January 2026. So these are some of the functions performed by the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And then we'll also have Joint Tax Board. Joint Tax Board. This Joint Tax Board is being established under Section 86 of Personal Income Tax Act, and it is the coordinating body for uniformity in tax administration across the Federation. So what are the functions of this JTB? That is Joint Tax Board. One, harmonization of tax administration procedures. So, and this new Tax Reform Act, that we have, so we can even say that, it was an advice, of this Joint Tax Board, that they advise, the federal government of Nigeria that, there is need, to harmonize, the tax administration, procedure. And another function performed by this JTB, they advise federal government and the state government on tax matters. And another function is they resolve dispute among tax authorities, because sometimes, there could be a kind of, clash between, the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the State Internal Revenue Service, especially, regarding the issue of value-added tax. Because up till now, I think maybe still, there is a court, there is pending litigation, that is on the issue of value-added tax. Still, some state government, they are claiming that they will be the one to, administer, collect, and, and even assess, what that value-added tax. So when there is a kind of, dispute among these tax authorities, like the Federal Inland Revenue Service, and then the state, Internal Revenue Service. So it is this, JTV just trying to reconcile, that, conflicts between these two tax authorities. And then it also promotes, what exchange of information between this Federal Inland Revenue Service and state internal revenue services. So these are some of the functions, of this JTB. And then we also have tax identification and registration. So all taxpayers are required to register and obtain a tax identification number. Registration, improve monitoring, record keeping, and compliance. And then this TIN number is mandatory for corporate and individual taxpayers engaging in banking, contract and government, transaction. So this, if we are talking about this TIN number, that is tax identification number. So we have, for individual taxpayers, and then we have corporate taxpayers. So of which, like for the individuals, they can get it, through this JTB at the State Internal Revenue Service, while, for the corporate entities, they can get it, at the Federal Inland Revenue Service. So what are the challenges or problems of tax administration in Nigeria? One, widespread tax evasion and avoidance. So like I said, this tax evasion and avoidance, it became, the biggest challenge of tax administration in Nigeria. Because like if we take tax evasion, like I said, it is when, taxpayer is trying, to evade tax. It's when he's trying, not to pay tax maybe completely, or when, they're just trying to, minimize, the tax payable. So we call it, tax evasion. So of which, like I told you, this tax evasion, it is absolutely illegal. And it is a criminal offense, for somebody, or let's say for an individual taxpayer or corporate taxpayer to engage in tax evasion activity. So it is just, tax avoidance. So that one is by legal means. And how does it, emanate or arises? Like I told you, it is when the taxpayers are just trying to take advantage of loopholes that exist in the tax laws. Because, the law, they are not perfect, because, they are man-made. So there could be a kind of gap, in the law. So in that case, the taxpayer, if they engage the services of, tax professionals, so in that case, they will advise them, on how to minimize tax through taking advantage of, loopholes that exist in the tax laws. So that is what we call tax avoidance. And then another challenge is inadequate taxpayer education. So we can say that, most of the taxpayers, they are not that well educated about the tax, because some, they don't even know that, it is their civic responsibility, to pay tax, to the government. So it's like there is inadequate, taxpayer education. So of which we can say that this relevant tax authority, honestly, they are not doing enough in terms of, what taxpayer education and enlightenment. So that's why, it became, one of the challenges or problem of tax administration in Nigeria. And then we also have weak enforcement mechanisms. So it's like, you see these tax, relevant tax authorities, honestly, the mechanism, or let's say the enforcement mechanisms they use. So honestly, it's not that strong that will force, with taxpayers, especially the defaulters, to comply, with the tax laws. So it's like this one too, it became, one of the challenges of tax administration in Nigeria. And then we also have corruption and lack of transparency among tax officials. So we know how, tax officials, sometimes they compromised. So maybe sometime if maybe they're just trying to assist, maybe a taxpayer, if that taxpayer, maybe based on his records, he's supposed to pay like maybe, 2 million naira to the government. So in that case, you see sometime the tax officials, they do compromise, isn't it? Whereby, they will just ask, the taxpayer to pay a very insignificant amount, to the government as a tax, while, giving them, what they call PR, that is public relation, so that is, what is happening. So honestly, there is corruption and lack of transparency, in the system. So which, it normally, happens among, the tax officials. And then we also have, poor database and record management, especially, at the state and the local government level. So you see the database, you understand, or the tax needs, it is not being properly managed. You understand? So you see, like if you take a state like maybe Lagos or Kano State, with the highest number of population they have. So if you just check, their, taxpayer database. So if you see the number of taxpayers, they captured. So the number is not encouraging, honestly. And this is as a result of poor database and record management. And then we also have multiple taxation and overlapping function of tax authorities. So that one too, it became, one of the biggest, challenge of, tax administration in Nigeria, multiple taxation or multiplicity of taxation. You see sometime, state internal revenue service raise a kind of, demand notice requesting a taxpayer to pay maybe one particular, tax. So the same tax, maybe the local government revenue committee, they will still write, another, a demand notice requesting the same taxpayer to say, to pay, the same tax or the same fee, as the case may be. So this multiple taxation or multiplicity of taxation, it became one of the, challenges, of tax administration of Nigeria. So which, I believe with the advent of this Tax Reform Act, it's like it came, to address this issue of multiplicity of taxation. So I believe once, we begin to implement that, new Tax Reform Act, so it's like, it will address this issue of multiplicity of taxation to, certain level. Even if it is not being addressed completely, I believe, will address more than 50% of this issue of multiplicity of taxation in Nigeria. And then we have tax reform in tax administration, so of which several reforms have been introduced to improve Nigerian tax system. So of which some of the reforms, we have is establishment of FRS 2007, Establishment Act. So which, because of that, FRS Establishment Act of 2007, so that is what make FRS to be an autonomous body. So they are no more answerable to Federal Ministry of Finance. And even, the chairman, the executive chairman of Federal Revenue Service is no longer answerable to the Honorable Minister of Finance. So he can only be answerable to the president. So it's like the FRS, is became, an autonomous body. So this is part of the reform we have in the tax administration at the federal level. And another reform, we have is the introduction of taxpayer identification number. That is this NIN number. So of which, prior to 2011, there was nothing like, tax identification number. So it was around that 2011 through joint tax vote, they came up, with this, initiative that, there is need, and then, to have a kind of unique number for each, in the, for each taxpayer, be it, individual taxpayer or corporate, taxpayer. So we have this introduction of taxpayer identification number, and then we have computerization and e-filing platforms. Like if you take the Federal Revenue Service, it is obvious, like, they normally make use of tax promax. So like you maybe as tax consultant or tax accountant, maybe if you are assisting, your clients or your organization, filing, annual return, on monthly basis, filing VAT and other taxes. So you don't need to, walk into, Federal Revenue Service office, identify it, manually. So it's like you can make use of this tax promise, to file your annual return and even make, remittance, of your taxes. So this is, this kind of development, that we have, the introduction of computerization and e-filing platforms. So even at the state level, we have like here in Kano State, we have, before we were using KIMAS and we are now using Easy Tax. So it is just like this tax promax. And then we have establishment of tax appeal tribunal, TAT, that is for quick resolution of dispute. Like I told you, sometimes there could be a kind of dispute, between the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the State Inland Revenue Service. So in that case, or maybe between relevant tax authority and even the taxpayer, because sometimes as a taxpayer, if maybe an assessment is being raised, so which, you are not satisfied, with that, assessment. So in that case, you have rights, as a taxpayer to object, what that assessment raised by the relevant tax authority. So of which, if you object it, in that case, firstly, there are procedures, that need to be followed. So after, you object it, you have to make sure that, you state or you have, a valid reasons why you are objecting that assessment raised by the relevant tax authority. So after, you have written that letter or that letter of objection, so the relevant tax authority will now receive that letter, and then they will now serve you with the invitation letter and then to come for reconciliation. So when, you appear, before the final, for that reconciliation, it's like you'll be asked to raise, your concern, regarding that assessment. So if it happens, you have a valid, reasons, for objecting it, of course, it will be considered. But sometimes the issue, it may not be resolved, at that, reconciliation level. So which, sometimes it even leads to litigation. So probably the taxpayer might feel, might feel, it is not been fair and just, to him. So in that case, as part of his right as a taxpayer, he can now just report, that issue or that case to this, tax appeal, tribunal. So which, they will attend to, that issue that is being, raised, by the taxpayer. So, and we also have automation of this value added withholding tax remittances through this, computerization and e-filing platform like Tax Promas, Easy Tax, KIMAS, and the rest. And then we have continuous taxpayer enlightenment programs, of which at all the level, the federal level, the state level, is like they're trying to say that, they continue to educate and enlighten, the taxpayers for them to know that paying tax, is a civic, responsibility of on, individual taxpayers and corporate, taxpayers. So these are some of the reforms, that we have in tax administration in Nigeria. And let's quickly look at the rights and duties of taxpayers. Like I said, you as a taxpayer, you have, some privileges, and you also have, rights. So which, no matter what, the relevant tax authority cannot deny you those rights and privileges. So what are these rights? Number one, right to be informed and educated about taxes. Right to be informed and educated about taxes. So like I told you, we now have, a new Tax Reform Act. So which, before the implementation is like, that is, what all these relevant tax authorities, are doing, both, at the federal level and the state level. They're just trying, to educate, the taxpayers about these new tax laws that came into being, so that, they will not, have that, as an, excuse that, we are not aware, we don't know, because they are saying ignorance of law is not an excuse. So that's why, the taxpayer has right to be informed and educated about, the taxes. And another right, of the taxpayer is right to confidentiality of tax information. The taxpayers, they do reveal, information and document to the taxpayers, sorry, to the tax authorities. So any information that is being provided, by the taxpayer, so it's like the tax authority, they have, duty of confidentiality that they're supposed to owe to the taxpayer. So any information, they gain or they collect in the course of carrying out, their statutory duty, so such information will not be revealed, except if they have gotten the consent, of the taxpayer. But without the taxpayer's consent, they cannot reveal such information. And then another right is right, to fair treatment and appeal against assessment. So that's why, I told you, after, the relevant tax authority might have raised a kind of assessment, so you as a taxpayer, you have right, to object it if you are not okay, with that, assessment. And then also right to refund where overpayment occur, because sometimes mistakenly, you understand, or maybe due to ignorance, of law, you understand. So in that case, some taxpayers, they do make overpayment, of the tax. So if they're supposed to pay like maybe 2,000, maybe at their total tax liability, and then they end up paying more than that, maybe 5,000. So they might have, an overpayment of like maybe 2,000 naira. So in that case, if it is discovered that a taxpayer make an overpayment, so that taxpayer has right to be refunded. So even though there is an arrangement, sometimes you can write requesting, for refund, and sometimes that, overpayment, it can be regarded, maybe it can be kept, with the relevant tax authority. So it is time for you to pay, tax. So in that case, that, overpayment can be used to settle, part of that tax liability. That is, the subsequent, tax liability. And then the duties, of the taxpayer. The taxpayers too, they have duties. They have duties, as well. So of which, the duties, of these taxpayers, it comprises of duty to register with relevant tax authority. It depends. Like, for the individuals, even though, like, if you take corporate, corporate taxpayers, it's like they have this duty as to register with both, state inland revenue service and then the federal inland revenue service, because they will be filing annual return, for their employees. That is for their staff. That is for payee remittances. So, and they need to as well, register with the federal inland revenue service, because, they need to be filing, their annual return for company income tax, and, for value added tax, and the rest. So number two, duty to keep proper records and books of account. You as a taxpayer is like you're expected to keep a proper record of your transactions, so that maybe the income that you're going to declare or the income that you're going to file, with the relevant tax authority. So it's like that, what income will be correct. So that's why, a taxpayer is having this duty to keep proper record and book of account, so that will be assessed, accordingly. And then another duty is duty to file annual return and pay tax promptly. So once, it is time for you to file your annual return, so you have to make sure that, you file it, with the relevant tax authority, and you don't need to waste time. And you have to make, a prompt payment. So once, you are served, with the demand notice, so the next thing is just, for you to be committed, I think, to go and settle that liability, because failure to do so, that it may attract, penalty and even interest as well of that total, tax due or tax payable. And another duty is duty to cooperate, with tax authorities. So that's why, anytime, we go for, like maybe tax audit or tax investigation, isn't it? We normally ask, for the taxpayers, to cooperate, with us. Because if they do not cooperate, with the relevant tax authorities or with the tax officials, so in that case, it's like the tax officials, they will find it very, very difficult, to do the needful. So that's why, the taxpayer is having this duty to give a kind of maximum cooperation, to the tax official and with the relevant tax authorities. So in conclusion, the tax administration in Nigeria is fundamental to revenue mobilization and economic development, while challenges exist. And reforms such as automation, the introduction of TIN identification number system, the establishment of established, institutions like the Federal Revenue Service, Joint Tax Board, and tax, appeal tribunal. All this is like, they have strengthened, what the tax administration system in Nigeria. And then for sustainable growth, Nigeria must continue to modernize a tax administration and build trust with taxpayers to encourage voluntary compliance. Sometimes, what is happening in Nigeria, the way maybe government, is managing, the taxpayers' money. Honestly, sometimes it's not encouraging. And even though that, it will not be a reason, for the taxpayers not to comply, not to cooperate, with the taxpayers by paying their tax dues. Because you as a taxpayer, any amount, you pay as a tax. So you shouldn't expect anything, a return, with that payment, you make. So that's why, it is called, or the tax, is defined as a compulsory levy. So you cannot hold, government as, accountable that, since, I pay tax, so definitely I must receive something, a return because of, what that tax payment, I made. So it is not like that. But at least it's like, there is need for the government to build trust, with the taxpayers so as, to encourage voluntary compliance. So you as a taxpayer, you will feel encouraged. If it is time, for you to file your return, to even pay your tax, you should just go ahead. So you don't need to be forced. You don't need to be forced as in, to pay tax. So voluntarily, willingly, you just walk into, tax office, get, your assessment, get, the invoice, you understand, and you just, go to the bank, or you can even use you can use remitter via your phone, you can just, facilitate, the payment. So that is just about it. So this is all about, this tax administration. So maybe we're supposed to round off, I think maybe the class, that is 10:30. But I know it's not easy, most of us, we have been at work and, we are tired. So I can even say that it is time, for us, to go to our bed. But we may not reach to that, 10:30. So I think maybe let's see whether if maybe there are questions. So please, do we have questions? And please, I want to still, apologize because it's like when I've started, calls has been coming, I was a bit destabilized. Was so sorry about that. But inshallah, going forward, we'll try, to use, a different device to get connected so that we shouldn't be, distracted when, the class is ongoing. So, Hawa, please, you have the floor. You can just take the floor, please. It's like you're raising your hand.
Okay, sir. The question I want to ask is that you said taxpayers they can keep record,
Yes.
and you said we should not expect anything in return while paying tax. So what's now the purpose of keeping the record?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Hawa, for asking, that question. You see, it's like what I just, want you to put, at the back of your mind is, this tax, you as a Nigerian, you and I, we are all Nigerians, and, paying tax is an obligation. It's an obligation on us to pay government tax, whether, we like it or not. Even though I believe maybe if you are working, maybe that pay that is being deducted, from your salary, I didn't mean maybe that money, will be paid maybe to voluntarily, pay government tax. I believe probably you may not be willing as a to pay such tax. You understand? So I just, want you to have this at the back of your mind. Paying tax, it is our civic responsibility. It's an obligation on us as Nigerians. In as far as, we have a source of income. And if that income, it is up to the amount that we're supposed to pay tax, so we have no option, we have to pay government tax. You understand? And then the issue of, keeping record is, it is very, very important because the government, cannot just, ask you to pay tax, except maybe if government, it establishes, a basis. How much are you earning? Maybe if you're into the business, maybe as a one-man business. So it's like you're expected, to keep a proper record of all your business transactions. How much profit, did you make, for that year? Isn't it? So it is based on that record because, without having that, without having those proper records, so you yourself, you can't even know whether if that your business, is doing well or not. You can't even know whether if you are, running the business at profit or loss. So keeping that proper, record is very, very important. It is very, very paramount because, without it, so in that case, the relevant tax authorities, if there is no any basis through which, they are going to subject you to tax. So in that case, it's like there is what we call base of judgment, that is BOJA. So they can now just apply BOJA on you based on, what they have seen, maybe the stock level you have, isn't it? So from there, they can just rate an assessment and ask you to pay. And, you pay to the government as a tax, you are not expected as to expect something in return. That, I pay government 2,000 naira as what? As a tax. So therefore, I expect something that government, must do something, for me, as a taxpayer, for you as Hawa. You shouldn't expect that. So it is, the government, that will decide, what to do with that taxpayers' money. So Hawa, please, I hope, I've answered, your question.
Yes, sir. But sir,
Yes.
those people that they used to go around shops, like
Yes.
shops that they used to go around shops to collect money. Are they delivering the money to the government?
Yes, that is, what we highlighted, as part of the challenges, of tax administration, because there is leakages, of the revenue. Sometimes that's why, I said it, there's a compromise, from the tax officials. Because sometimes, they can even, collect, the money, from those shop owners, you understand, and they may even decide, to pocket, the money without, remitting or without putting the money into the government coffers. So it happens like that. So that one, we just call it as a compromise. But With this technological advancement, we have in the tax system, it's like, honestly, that issue of, revenue leakages, it has been reduced drastically, honestly. It has been addressed because I believe maybe there are some, relevant tax authorities, they are not collecting cash again. So you as a taxpayer, if you want to pay, your tax, so you have to pay it online. So you have to either maybe generate a kind of remitter, go into the bank and make, the payment. So you are not expected as to give cash to the tax official. So it is forbidden. So you as a taxpayer, you need to assist, what the government. Any taxpayer, any tax official that asks you, to give cash, so you shouldn't just give that cash. Let them, give, the account details. Even if it is maybe the levies collected, by the local government, revenue committees, because I believe it is the local government, tax collectors that normally used to go around, shop by shop and be collecting money anyhow. You understand? But for the federal government, state, it is not like that. Honestly, there's a kind of sanity. So you are not expected, to pay your tax, in what, in cash. So you have to pay it, maybe through bank or to pay it online, maybe through remitter and other channels, approved by those tax authorities. Are you okay? Hawa?
Yes, I understand, sir. Those those people that the reason why I'm asking is that there's this group of tax people that came to my mommy's shop and they were like tormenting her like she should pay tax and all of that. Those people
Yeah.
that sell pepper and those ones that don't have idea of it, they pay cash to those people. Like those people that send pepper, all these small shops, those
I understand
mamas that they
these
don't
petty, just call them as petty traders.
yes.
These petty traders. I understand, what you're saying. But in that case, you as prospective, a future, as a future chartered accountant, I think in that case, what you need to do, maybe to assist, your mom, isn't it, and even maybe her neighbors to understand. So the first thing, whenever these people, they came around, try to ask them, from where are they? Are they, from state on the revenue side, state on the revenue service, or they are from the local government? So ask them, to identify themselves. Isn't it? Ask them this kind of question first. So if it is, the state government, they are from the state internal revenue service, I believe they do not supposed to collect, what, cash. No matter what. But for the local government, up to now, they are collecting cash. They are collecting cash up to now, honestly.
Okay, sir.
So that is, what you're supposed to do. Ask them, from where are you placed? Can you identify yourself? So that is, the first thing, you need to know. And then from there, if they are from the local government, most likely, but you make sure, let me tell you this, maybe as a tax man, whenever, these people, they come around asking payment, of the tax. So if, they are going to pay cash, make sure they provide you with receipts. Any amount of, you pay as the tax. So you make sure, they provide you with evidence of payment. That is receipts. So don't just give them, the money without asking for the receipt. So you make sure, they give that receipt. Because, without that receipt, probably, sometimes these people, they might impersonate. You understand? They might pretend as if, they are tax, collectors, while, they don't, do impersonation. So in that case, ask them, to identify themselves. And if it happens, you're convinced you're going to make that cash payment, so you make sure, you ask for the receipt immediately after the payment. So this is, the advice, I would like to give.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. So class, please, do we have other questions? or observations, or even criticisms? Hello? Maybe. Hello, please. Do we have questions, please? So I think maybe if there are no further question, I think we may, call it a day. But immediately, after we end this call, I'm going to share this, this lecture note, just, for your further, reference. And I will advise, please, because, the lecture note, I'm providing, it is more of summary. Okay. So maybe if you want to read more, I will advise you, please don't forget, to be using your study pack. Like I said, during my first lectures, if you want to, clear this taxation at once, advisably, you need to be using ICANN study pack, because, that ICANN study pack, is a very, very comprehensive, material. You don't need to source other material. So that ICANN, study pack is enough for you for both theory, theoretical aspect of it, the computation. There are, examples, illustration, that are of exam, standards. So please never go beyond ICANN study pack. I'm still emphasizing that. Make use of ICANN study pack. It's very, very important. That is, for this taxation. The material, is very rich. And even the question, to be asked, it will be within, the scope of that, study pack. I believe, ICANN is not going to bring, question outside that study pack. So I'm just telling you this from my own experience. So please, anything, we discussed with the document, I shared, still, you need to revisit, that your study pack to see more details. So I think maybe in the absence of, additional question, I think maybe we can just, call it a day. So I thank you very much, for coming. I know it's not easy, we have been tired, coming back from work. So it is now time for us, to rest, but we are still on this. But you just take it as part of struggle, okay? And once, we have the certificate, it's like, we are good to go. So even our level, by God's grace, it will change. And it will even help us, to have a career, to have, a kind of, career progression. So please, don't worry about that. Keep moving. Be committed. Be determined. So this is part of the sacrifice, okay? Thank you very much for coming, and I wish you all the best. To see you next week, same time next week. Thank you very much, and bye for now.
Bye for now.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
You're most welcome.
All right, good night.
All right, good night.